Election day is just 17 days from now. We're seeing record turnout in Georgia and North Carolina as early voting begins. 1 million people have already cast their ballot in Georgia. This is a record turnout, nearly double what we saw in 2020. North Carolina's first day of voting also set new records. Remember, large voter turnout is bad for Trump. He has to claim voter fraud in order to pass laws to suppress the vote, to make it harder for people of color to cast their ballots. This is how Republicans, it's the only way they can win, by suppressing the vote. When you see record turnout in key swing states like Georgia or North Carolina, that won't be reflected in the polling, which I'm going to be talking about. Record turnout is not seen in the polling, and the polling is showing the race tightening. The polling is wrong. Trump is reportedly physically and emotionally exhausted. He canceled a big NRA event to get some much-needed sleep as he continues to behave erratically, wandering around on stage, saying incredibly stupid things like Abraham Lincoln should have settled the Civil War. Isn't he a Republican? Should a Republican say that? He is now threatening to sue 60 Minutes over their Kamala Harris interview. He chickened out. 60 Minutes said, we're going to fact check you. So he said, I'm not doing it. Kamala Harris did the interview. He's jealous. And now he's threatening to sue 60 Minutes because they edited the interview with Kamala Harris, he says, to make Donald Trump look bad. Meanwhile, Lindsey Graham went on Fox News and complained that Republicans can't raise any money. Gee, I wonder why. You would think people would want to donate to the Republican Party so RNC co-chair Lara Trump could funnel your donations into all these mysterious LLCs that belong to who? Who do you think these LLCs belong to? Nobody knows where the money is going. Nobody knows. Well, we have what many think, but I don't, concerning news coming to us from Michigan. Now, the polling averages show Michigan tied. This is the first time since August 9th that the polling averages in Michigan were tied. Now, in order to get to 270, Kamala needs to win the blue wall, and Michigan is part of that. Harris is up by more than 1 point in Wisconsin, and she's up by more than 1 point in Pennsylvania. These are the polling averages. I should caution, a lot of A-plus pollsters they're now using a once discredited methodology to measure the races. Why are they doing this? Because they underestimated the Trump vote in 2016. To some degree, they think they underestimated the Trump vote in 2020. So some of the top pollsters are weighting their samples differently this election. They're insisting that the pool of voters they draw from must include something like 50% of Americans who voted for Donald Trump in 2020. In other words, the sampling, before the poll even begins, the sampling starts with half of those being questioned being Trump voters in 2020. This is a methodology that has been discredited, but revived ever since Trump completely threw the pollsters back on their heels in 2016. So there are some who are now insisting these polls are heavily skewed in Trump's favor due to this overcorrection. Meanwhile, Trump now leads in the polling averages by 2 in Georgia and Arizona. He's taken the lead again in North Carolina. 2 days ago, Kamala Harris was in the lead in North Carolina. Harris is keeping her lead in Nevada. I'm not sure what's going on. I do know she's going to win. I do know she's going to crack open the electoral map. It's going to become apparent 24 hours before Election Day. Internal polling that we don't get to see shows this to be a landslide. It's why Donald Trump is already talking about the steal. The national polling averages show Kamala Harris winning the popular vote by 2% now. Keep in mind, these polls don't measure the enthusiasm, the record voter turnout we're seeing. These numbers do not reflect the momentum and the enthusiasm gap between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I am not worried. But because Trump and the Republicans are such a threat to our existence, I'm not worried. I'm concerned. I started off this morning with the polling because I want you to see how close this race might be, why complacency is our enemy, and why you need to vote and make sure your neighbors and loved ones are voting. Again, I don't trust any of the polling right now. The national polling averages are different. I'm seeing different national polling averages. I pay extra for this YouGov, which is state of the art. It's what The Economist uses. It's what CBS uses. Those polling averages show Kamala Harris still in the lead in Michigan. I know the polls drive everybody crazy, and to some degree, well, you can't drive me crazy because I've already gotten there. I'm unpacking. But I'm looking at polling averages from YouGov and The Economist that still show Harris leading in Michigan by 1. Am I making you nervous on purpose? Yes. Do not get complacent. We need a blue tsunami. Donald Trump was forced to pace the stage for 18 minutes last night after his sound went out just 10 minutes into his Michigan rally. Gee, must be a Union Hall that he was playing. Had to be. Doesn't pay his bills. This is what happens when you owe the city of El Paso $500,000 for your rally, and when you owe the city of Erie $50,000. He holds these rallies. The city puts up money to pay for protection, and then he stiffs them. When the sound finally came back on last night, Trump angrily told the crowd, quote, "I won't pay the bill to this stupid company." Like you were ever going to pay that bill in the first place. This is Michigan. This is a union town. You're in a union state. You think it just, 18 minutes without sound. How does that happen? He said, if it goes out again, I'll sue the ass off that company. To make matters even worse, the crowd was half full. Here he is. He's just wandering around. I could sit and watch this for 18 minutes. It's just him wandering around in front of his MAGA morons, waiting for the sound to come on, waiting. What happened? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. He just wanders and wanders. Look at this. He is failing. And this has been going on at all his rallies. He had one in Pennsylvania where there were 2 medical emergencies because it was too hot. He wouldn't spring for air conditioning, and people were passing out, and he just started playing music and dancing on stage. Look at him, the worst. Meanwhile, where are we? Okay, meanwhile, Kamala Harris campaigned in La Crosse, Wisconsin on Thursday, where she got heckled by some Trump supporters. Yeah, but Harris responded to the hecklers by challenging Donald Trump's manhood.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
No way she's losing. No way. There's your polling averages right there. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene knows that Donald Trump is going to lose Georgia and North Carolina because the voter turnout is so huge. She went on Alex Jones's show Friday and said Dominion machines in Georgia are switching Trump votes to Joe Biden votes. You know, and if it's on the Alex Jones show, you know it's true. With 10 million Americans already voting, there has been record turnout in Georgia as well as North Carolina. It doesn't bode well for Donald Trump. Rolling Stone reported this week that Trump has already begun calling the 2024 election rigged. The problem for Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene is you're not supposed to go after Dominion. They're litigious, kind of like Donald Trump. Dominion doesn't like people saying they're switching votes for Biden. You might remember last year Fox News was forced to settle $250 million with Dominion. After Dominion, they settled with Dominion for $250 million. Dominion sued the news organization for amplifying false accusations against Dominion voting machines. They kept saying they're switching Trump votes into Biden votes. It's why Lou Dobbs, may he rest in hell, got fired. It's why one of the reasons Tucker Carlson had to go. You should not, Marjorie should not be going after Dominion and spreading lies. But thanks to the speech or debate clause, that's Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of our Constitution, it's especially difficult to sue a sitting member of Congress over something they said. This is a problem. Members of Congress are free to lie. So it's doubtful Marjorie Taylor Greene can get sued by Dominion, which is why she's saying this. But with just 17 days until November 5th, get ready. Donald Trump and his bootlickers are setting into motion the stolen election lie. This is why you need to get out there and vote and make sure everyone you know is voting. Trump appeared on Univision Wednesday and lied about the number of people on January 6th who heard him speak that day on the ellipse.
Very importantly, you had hundreds of thousands of people come to Washington. They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election. They thought the election was a rigged election, and that's why they came.
They thought the election was rigged because you lied to them. You lied to them. He's even said his speech on the ellipse was bigger than the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. It wasn't. Just about 15,000 people showed up. Trump lied and said he did nothing to incite the insurrection. This is what he told the audience at Univision. He said, I did nothing to incite the insurrection. He conveniently forgot that he told the crowd that day, you have to go down to the Capitol and fight like hell.
Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong.
You're lying. You're a liar. Then Trump lets slip that January 6th was an us versus them moment where he clearly saw the Capitol police officers as being on the other side, them as opposed to us.
There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And
yeah, by saying the others had guns, the others, by saying we didn't have guns, the others had guns, he's admitting he identifies with the nearly 2,000 armed insurrectionists who broke into the Capitol on January 6th. So how does Trump categorize 6 dead Capitol police officers and 150 police officers being rushed to the hospital on January 6th?
When I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows.
Yeah. And how does he describe it?
But that was a day of love.
Yeah, a day of love. That's how he defines love. I'm pretty sure Ivana, Marla Maples, and Melania would say, yeah, that's an idea. That's how he manifests love. Sounding like a mobster, talking like the great Alphonse Capone, Trump lied and said, quote, "They couldn't get me. They couldn't get me, Mom." He says they couldn't get me on inciting the insurrection.
But they couldn't get me because of the fact that I said everything's got to be peaceful and patriotic.
Yeah, the truth is they did get you. The only reason you haven't gone to trial yet in the D.C. election interference case is because you've spent millions and millions and millions of campaign donations on lawyers who have been delaying the election interference trial for more than a year. That trial was supposed to start back in March, but Trump's attorneys, because they're getting paid millions and millions and millions of dollars through a super PAC, I can't understand why Lindsey Graham said people aren't donating to the Republican Party. His attorneys did succeed in getting the Supreme Court to grant him partial immunity. But partial immunity doesn't signal innocence. It just means ex-presidents can't be tried for any crimes they committed while performing official duties. What happened on January 6th was not an official duty, although there was some official duties spread all over Statuary Hall. The people he ordered to commit those crimes can be tried, even though he can't. Never forget that. He may have partial immunity, but the people he ordered to commit those crimes do not, which is why so many of his closest associates have lost their law licenses and are going broke because of all their legal fees. Partial immunity doesn't mean innocence. In the nearly 4 years since January 6, 944 defendants have received criminal sentences for their roles in the insurrection, and they all acted on orders from Donald Trump. 944 defendants were put behind bars because of crimes they committed on orders from Donald Trump on and before January 6. At least 10 were found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Seditious conspiracy as in sedition. During an appearance on a right-wing podcast yesterday, Donald Trump defended the January 6ers who are behind bars right now.
Why are they still being held?
Because they were found guilty. They were convicted. They're not being held. They were given trials and found guilty. Then he compared the arrests of the January 6ers to the internment of Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor.
Nobody's ever been treated like this. Nobody's ever. Maybe the Japanese during Second World War, frankly. But, they were held too.
Yeah, and we know how much Fred Trump was against that, right? Well, the difference between the Japanese and the January 6ers, the Japanese Americans and the January 6ers, the difference is Japanese Americans didn't attack us on December 7th. But Trump's goons, they attacked us on January 6th. It was the most violent day in the Capitol since the War of 1812. In newly unsealed evidence this week, Special Counsel Jack Smith included a recent promise delivered by Donald Trump where he says he's going to pardon the January 6ers. Smith included in this recent discovery a Truth Social post where Trump wrote back in March of this year, quote, "My first act as your next president will be to free the January 6 hostages being wrongfully imprisoned." Bart Jansen, Josh Meyer, and Aisha Bakshi, writing over at USA Today, they say Smith's decision to include this evidence suggests that Jack Smith views that social media post as further proof Trump was in on a criminal plot back in 2020 and early 2021. In a normal trial, any mobster who talks about trying to free his underlings, that signals guilt. Trump lied by comparing January 6 to Black Lives Matter protesters in Portland back in 2020.
But when you look at Portland and the damage they did and killed people.
That old chestnut. It is a lie. They didn't kill anybody. 59 police officers were reportedly injured in Portland, but only one required hospitalization. Nobody was murdered in Portland. Donald Trump is a liar. He is a liar. Everything that comes out of this man's mouth is a lie. Trump lied and insisted nobody died on January 6th.
Because other than Ashley, nobody was killed here. Nobody was killed.
6 police officers died in the immediate aftermath. Trump lied, saying nobody brought any guns to the Capitol on January 6th. The Justice Department charged, this is a lie, right? The Justice Department charged 171 defendants with carrying deadly weapons into the Capitol on January 6th. There are countless photos and videos of rioters outside the Capitol brandishing assault weapons. Mother Jones.
And there were no guns involved. And these are all gun owners. You know, these are people that have guns, but they never went to the Capitol with guns. Yeah.
Mother Jones reports that before Trump's speech on January 6th, the Secret Service confiscated 269 knives, 242 canisters of pepper spray, 18 brass knuckles, 18 tasers, 6 pieces of body armor, and 3 gas masks. Only 3? Donald Trump is about to speak, and they only found 3 gas masks. They also found 30 batons or blunt instruments and 17 miscellaneous items like scissors, needles, or screwdrivers. These are the people who got up close to Donald Trump on the ellipse. That's what the Secret Service was able to confiscate. These are the people who got close to Trump that day. According to the January 6th committee, Trump grew furious with his Secret Service for delaying his speech that day because the Secret Service was not allowing his supporters to gather in front of him on the ellipse. Trump was told by Secret Service that the reason it was taking so long for him to start his speech is his supporters were setting off the magnetometers with all their guns. Those are the supporters who were willing to go through the magnetometers with their guns, right? And they got confiscated, taken away. The ones with the guns laid back and didn't go up front to be close to him on the ellipse. Trump, according to White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, said to his Secret Service agents when they told him, people are here with guns, we got to confiscate them. Trump said, quote, "What do I care if they have guns? They're not going to use them to hurt me. What do I care if they have guns? They're not going to use them to hurt me." Everybody knew that the mob was heavily armed that day. January 6th was stochastic terrorism writ large. When you get in front of thousands of heavily armed people and start talking crap, shit is going to come down. By the time Trump took the stage that day, his crowd's fury was completely stoked by Trump toadies who got up and spoke before him. All Trump needed to do when he spoke was add a shiny patina of respectability to the violence. Here is Republican Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama. He's a lawyer. Here he is wearing a bulletproof vest while he speaks before this crowd. He knew they were heavily armed. He knew that. And he wore a bulletproof vest behind bulletproof glass because he knew they were heavily armed. Opening for Donald Trump on January 6th, wearing a bulletproof vest behind bulletproof glass. This is what Mo Brooks told that crowd before Trump went up.
Now, I'm Congressman Mo Brooks from Alabama's 5th Congressional District, and I've got a message that I need you to take to your heart and take back home, and along the way, stop at the Capitol. But we are here today because America is at risk, unlike it has been in decades and perhaps centuries. Socialist Democrats attack and mock our moral values, even to the point of sarcastically in the United States Capitol, one of the most revered places in America, mockingly closing their hedonistic prayers with a man and a woman. What is that? But we are not going to let the socialists rip the heart out of our country. We are not going to let them continue to corrupt our elections and steal from us our God-given right to control our nation's destiny. Today is also a day of revelation and separation. Today the curtain will be pulled back, and American patriots will learn by their votes which Republican senators and congressmen have the courage to fight for America. Today, Republican senators and congressmen will either vote to turn America into a godless, amoral, dictatorial, oppressed, and socialist nation on the decline, or they will join us and they will fight and vote against voter fraud and election theft and vote for keeping America great. Now, I can't speak for anyone else, but I can promise you that as for me, Mo Brooks from Alabama, today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass. Now, our ancestors sacrificed their blood, their sweat, their tears, their fortunes, and sometimes their lives to give us, their descendants, an America that is the greatest nation in world history. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to do the same? My answer is yes. Louder, are you willing to do what it takes to fight for America? Louder, will you fight for America? We can make our voices heard for America by uttering words that cause socialists and weak-kneed Republicans on Capitol Hill to know that we, American patriots, are not going to take it anymore. That we, American patriots, are going to come right at them. That we, American patriots, are going to take America back and restore the foundational principles that have combined to make us the greatest nation in world history. What are the simple words we must shout to the heavens and carry the message to Capitol Hill? What are the words that cause socialists and weak-kneed Republicans on Capitol Hill to shake in their boots and cower in their foxholes? What are the words that scare the hell out of socialists and weak-kneed Republicans alike? Join with me. USA, 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 USA. Washington, America, heed those words, because we're going to carry them right to you. USA, God bless America, and the fight begins today.
In a bulletproof vest, that's Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, former Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, wearing a bulletproof vest behind bulletproof glass, speaking to armed thugs on January 6th. He talks this way. Is that protected speech? Is that inciting an insurrection? And who is he doing this for? He's doing it on orders from Donald Trump to rev up the crowd. Now, the speech or debate clause that I talked about, he was a United States congressman at the time. It's pretty hard to nail a United States congressman for something he says, especially while Congress is in session. And Congress was in session on July 6th until the crowd he stirred up made them all run for cover. Right after January 6th, Mo Brooks, a lawyer, called the White House and asked for a pardon. He didn't get one. He was the subject of a civil suit that has kind of dropped. But clearly this man, on orders from Donald Trump, was inciting an insurrection. How can you not see that? And after the dust settled and he realized he wasn't going to be charged with the crime and he wasn't going to be sued in a civil court by the Capitol Police, he gave an interview where he said it's time to move on past 2020. He said, Joe Biden is president, it's time to move on. And guess what happened? Donald Trump, who ordered him to give this speech, to sell whatever soul you have, and incite an insurrection, an attack on the United States Congress, where this POS works. After he gave an interview and said Donald Trump needs to move on, Joe Biden is president, Donald Trump ordered him primaried in the 2022 midterms, and he lost his seat. He didn't even get to run in the general election. Donald Trump primaried him. This is what happens when you give everything. I mean, he gave everything to Trump that day. And look what happens. He loses his seat. And then there's Rudy Giuliani. He spoke that day before Trump took the stage. He couldn't have made it any clearer. Rudy could not have made it any clearer in front of those armed thugs. Here is Rudy Giuliani standing next to Dr. John Eastman. He was Clarence Thomas's law clerk, best friends with Ginny Clerk, a professor of law, a lawyer. He's the legal scholar who helped dream up the false electors scheme, and he lent intellectual heft to the theory of why Mike Pence didn't have to certify the election for Joe Biden on January 6th. Even after the insurrection, Eastman was texting Mike Pence's lawyer and chief of staff telling him not to certify, even after January 6th. Giuliani was working the phones. He called Tommy Tuberville after January 6th. Before Congress went back into session to certify, Rudy Giuliani, after January 6th, the air was still filled with the stench of tear gas and human feces, and Rudy's on the phone urging people not to certify. And don't forget, 140 Republicans after January 6th, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, they voted not to certify the election for Joe Biden. Here is Rudy Giuliani insisting before this group of armed thugs that there was rampant voter fraud, that the election was stolen, but he admitted he lost all 60 lawsuits. He lost 60 lawsuits challenging the 2020 elections. In the lead up to January 6th, Rudy Giuliani lost 60 lawsuits. Rudy said he and John Eastman had run out of legal options, so it was up to the people in the crowd.
So let's have trial by combat.
Let's have trial by combat. I lost 60 trials. Time for combat. Cassidy Hutchinson worked in the Trump White House as an assistant to Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff. She cooperated with the January 6th committee fully. She fully cooperated, even though Trump lawyers offered her riches if she didn't. In her book, she writes that backstage on January 6, Rudy Giuliani sexually harassed her. She says Giuliani touched her inappropriately while Dr. John Eastman leered. She said, clearly enjoying the power that Rudy had over her that day. Both Eastman and Giuliani have lost their law licenses for the roles they played on January 6. And Giuliani is being sued by a former female employee, charging him with wage theft and rape. And he's broke. Donald Trump won't help him, won't pay his legal fees. Just, you get too close to Trump, he's the scorpion. How is it possible that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people went to prison because of January 6, and many more are about to go to prison because of January 6? How is it possible that all of them were acting on orders from Donald Trump? And yet Donald Trump insists, I'm innocent, because the Supreme Court granted him partial immunity. And he's been able to delay these trials until after the election, knowing if he wins, he can order his Justice Department to drop all the charges against him. Remember, there wasn't a single employee of the executive branch other than Jeffrey Clark, a low-level Justice Department lawyer. Except for Jeffrey Clark, there was nobody in the executive branch willing to say the election was stolen. The head, Chris Krebs, the head of Homeland Security Election Integrity, Chris Krebs said this was the safest, most secure election in American history. Donald Trump fired him after he said that. Chris Krebs, head of Homeland Security Election Integrity, in December said the most secure election in American history. Trump fires him. There is not a single employee of the executive branch other than Jeffrey Clark in the Justice Department. There wasn't a single employee of the Republican Party, not a single lawyer would assist Donald Trump by mid-November, late November, in claiming election fraud. Ronna McDaniel, who was chairwoman of the RNC, assisted in finding false electors in the false elector scheme. How she dodged an indictment is beyond me, but she's not a lawyer. She was the only one in the Republican Party who was willing to help Donald Trump perpetuate the lie that the election was stolen. So what did he do? He brought in outside counsel. This is what he did. He brought in Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman. He brought in Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, the MyPillow guy, because no legitimate employee of the executive branch, except for Jeffrey Clark in the Justice Department, no legitimate employee of the Republican Party, except for Ronna McDaniel, the chair who helped with the false elector scheme, nobody would help him. So everybody followed his order to overturn the election. And all of them have been indicted. A lot of them have gone to prison, but he's innocent? How is that possible? When Donald Trump says there were no guns on January 6, he needs to be called out for this. It's a lie. It's a dangerous lie. It's why you shouldn't even put him on Univision or interview him. Elmer Stewart Rhodes, for example, he was the head of the Oath Keepers. He is now serving an 18-year prison sentence for seditious conspiracy. Seditious conspiracy, as in sedition. This is one of the most underreported stories of the past 3 years. Rhodes was found guilty of setting up what he called a quick reaction force on the ground in front of the Capitol on January 6. Rhodes was found guilty of storing a large cache of assault weapons inside a hotel room. He put them there a few days before January 6. He had assault weapons, gas masks, bulletproof vests. He was prepared to start using those. He testified he was prepared to start using all these weapons, he said, once Donald Trump declared martial law on January 6. One witness who testified against Stewart Rhodes, a former Oath Keeper, said he went to the hotel. He said, there were so many weapons gathered in one place, I was shocked. He said, I had never seen so many weapons piled so high in one room. And he added, and I served in Iraq. That's how many weapons Stewart Rhodes brought to Washington, D.C. for January 6. According to testimony at the trial, Stewart Rhodes, head of the Oath Keepers, was on the phone on January 6 with someone at the White House during the riot. And Stewart Rhodes, according to the testimony, grew visibly agitated because Trump was not declaring martial law as promised. He expected to be deputized. Who gave him? Who planted that idea in his head? During the lead up to January 6, Stewart Rhodes, leader of the Oath Keepers, was in constant contact with Trump associates Roger Stone, General Michael Flynn, who was Donald Trump's national security advisor, as well as General Michael Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, and they all feature prominently in Trump's Stop the Steal conspiracy. Again, none of these people are government employees. General Michael Flynn was a government employee. He lasted about 14 days as Trump's first national security advisor, and then he got indicted for lying to the FBI about his conversations with the Russian ambassador that took place before Trump was sworn in. It's a violation of the Logan Act. You're not allowed to negotiate with the Russians until you're the actual national security advisor. During the trial, Rhodes and his associates said they had been assured that after the Capitol was stormed, Trump would invoke his emergency powers and then deputize the Oath Keepers, as well as the Proud Boys, stand back, stand by. They would be deputized to help maintain order. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were doing security in the lead up to January 6 for people like Roger Stone. By the way, Stewart Rhodes, just like J.D. Vance, Yale Law School graduate. Sidney Powell was Trump's outside lawyer, who Trump was planning to name as a special counsel to prosecute the Democrats for voter fraud. In the days leading up to January 6, he was going to appoint Jeffrey Clark as acting attorney general, and then he was going to name Sidney Powell as a special counsel who would prosecute Democrats for fictitious voter fraud. Well, mysteriously, Sidney Powell helped pay some of the legal fees for Stewart Rhodes, as well as other Oath Keepers. Odd. Sidney Powell later pled guilty in the Fulton County RICO trial, where she was charged with election interference. The Texas Bar Association has allowed her to keep her law license because Texas. How are we doing on time? Florida Governor Ron DeSantis campaigned for president, vowing to defeat the left's war on freedom of speech. You keep hearing about the cancel culture and how the woke mob won't let you say what you want. And a champion of the First Amendment. At the same time, his public schools launched America's largest book banning agenda, second only to Texas. And now, a federal judge in Florida on Friday reminded Ron DeSantis, a Harvard Law School graduate and fascist, a federal judge in Florida reminded DeSantis what the First Amendment means and what an actual First Amendment violation is. A quick refresher course for the fascist, racist Ron DeSantis. The First Amendment only protects American citizens from being censored by their government. It does not protect your right to say the N-word or the C-word at work, or to tell somebody, nice shirt, or you look pretty today. First Amendment doesn't protect your right to talk to women that way. Americans are free to censor the speech of other Americans by firing them for what they say. If you don't approve of their language or what they say, you can fire them. Americans are free to give a student a D on a term paper if that student claims climate change isn't man-made, or if that student says Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Incorrect answers on exams or term papers are not protected speech. Americans are free to stage boycotts against companies that sponsor television shows, podcasts, or news personalities with whom they disagree. Boycotts, canceling people, is a form of protected speech as long as the government isn't doing it. That's all the First Amendment does. It protects us from the government silencing us. And there's the Establishment Clause, which forbids the government from enforcing the religious beliefs of its leaders onto citizens. That's for another show. Abortion is on the ballot in Florida, and if voter turnout is anything like what we're seeing in Georgia or North Carolina, this could end up being a huge problem for Donald Trump and Republican incumbent Senator Rick Scott, who's running for re-election, who stole close to $1 billion from Medicare and Medicaid. At the time, it was the largest health care fine ever imposed by the Justice Department. He didn't have to pay it. His company did. He stole $1 billion from Medicare and Medicaid, Rick Scott, and used the money that he got to keep to finance his run for governor of Florida and his run for senator from Florida. So, Republicans might have a problem in Florida on November 5th because abortion is on the ballot, and if people turn out to vote for abortion, it's a problem for Republicans. So, besides Ron DeSantis' election police intimidating voters who signed this petition to get the pro-choice initiative on the ballot, DeSantis ordered his lawyer from the Florida Department of Health to write letters to local television stations threatening to fine and imprison the general managers of these local television stations if they continue to run ads that depict how dangerous life has become for mothers with problematic pregnancies ever since Florida's 6-week abortion ban went into effect this year. So DeSantis ordered his lawyer. The guy's name is John Wilson. He's the health department's general counsel. He sent cease and desist letters to several television stations that were running the ad. And he said, if you continue to run this ad, you'll be fined and put in prison based on some obscure law about false information about health. This is Ron DeSantis, who's an anti-vaxxer, killed all those people because of COVID and his mask laws and his anti-vax laws. And all of a sudden, he's enforcing some obscure law claiming that these pro-abortion ads are a public health menace. And the lawyer, John Wilson, who worked for the health department, he was the health department's general counsel, he sent the cease and desist letters, and then he quit. He couldn't take it. But the judge ordered the state's attorney general, Joseph Ladapow, anti-vaxxer, anti-masker. The judge said to knock it off. This was on Friday. Stop sending these cease and desist letters. The judge said that these letters are dangerous threats that amount to unconstitutional coercion and viewpoint discrimination, unquote. The judge ordered the state to allow the ads to run and ordered Ron DeSantis to stop intimidating local television stations. But Ron DeSantis is always talking about how the First Amendment is under threat. This is a violation of the First Amendment. When the state is threatening to arrest the general managers of television stations because they're running commercials that Ron DeSantis doesn't approve of, that is a First Amendment violation. This is the mop-up for October 19th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me this morning. Please like this episode. That way I remain in your feed. I know some of you don't know how to find the episode, so if you like it, it shows up more often in your feed. Please share this episode. That's the best way to help. The only reason I have an audience is because of my audience. It's the only reason. It's kind of weird. I'm not part of any podcast conglomerate. This has just been a grassroots growth, purely grassroots, because of my idiot listeners who are stupid enough to share this crap. Join the tens upon tens of morons who go to Shop David Feldman. This is why you get too close to me, I got to push you away. Go to Shop David Feldman. Pick up the worst case scenario mug. It's my worst case scenario map showing that Kamala Harris only needs to win the blue wall. That gets her to 270, and she's going to win the blue wall. And everybody needs to calm down. I think everybody is calmed down. I'm the one who's worried. Looking at the polls every day. I'm going to stop following the polls. The election is pretty much over. And so pick up the worst case scenario map. It's a great souvenir of the 2024 election, and it'll calm you down, especially if you put a little Jameson's in your coffee. And please check out my Halloween collection, like this 2029 inaugural ball, where Melania, doesn't she look happy, and Donald, doesn't he look healthy, are ready to dance their first dance at the 2029 inaugural ball. That's part of my Halloween collection. There's some other stuff there. Some of it's too disgusting. I can't show it to you. But check out the Halloween collection over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Halloween is in about, 10 days, 11, 12 days. So you should order the Halloween crap. I mean, if you're stupid enough to buy this, you should do it over the weekend so you don't have to pay for rush shipping. But if you're stupid enough to buy this junk, you're probably stupid enough to spring for the rush shipping. Yeah. This is why I've never made it, right? So I just can't say thank you. I gotta just push people away. Hamas on Friday confirmed the killing of their leader, Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar's longtime deputy eulogized him on Friday and promised the war with Israel will continue. Sinwar is considered the architect of the 2023 October 7th invasion of Israel, where 1,200 were killed while hundreds were tortured, raped, and taken hostage. Sinwar is one of 3 Hamas leaders killed by Israel in the past few months. In May, the International Criminal Court's prosecutor applied for warrants to arrest them for their role in the October 7th invasion of Israel. The International Criminal Court's prosecutor also applied for warrants to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for his reaction to the October 7th invasion. Ismail Haniyeh, seen on the left, was Hamas's political bureau chief. He was killed attending the inauguration of Iran's new president on July 31st. He was considered the top leader of Hamas, and he lived in Qatar. Mohammed Deif, seen in the center, was Hamas's top military leader in Gaza. He was killed in Gaza during a July Israeli airstrike. President Biden, meeting with world leaders in Germany, commented on the death of Sinwar.
The death of the leader of Hamas represents a moment of justice. He had the blood of Americans and Israelis, Palestinians and Germans and so many others on his hands.
Biden said he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the killing.
I told the Prime Minister of Israel yesterday, let's also make this moment an opportunity to seek a path to peace, a better future in Gaza without Hamas.
Israel says that an autopsy conducted later determined that Sinwar was killed by a shot to the head. Israel says Sinwar was killed in southern Gaza by a unit of trainee squad commanders who encountered him unexpectedly. According to the latest reports, they had no idea that they had killed the leader of Hamas in Gaza until it was confirmed by a DNA check. Sinwar led Hamas in Gaza since 2017 and is said to have been responsible for opening up relations between Hamas and Iran. Iran has refused to take any credit for the October 7th attack, even though Hamas says Iran funded it. Iran is a predominantly Shiite country, whereas Hamas adheres to the Sunni version of Islam. Hezbollah, Iran's army in Lebanon, is also Shia and therefore not considered a natural ally of Hamas. But after October 7th, Hezbollah began firing missiles into northern Israel to demonstrate solidarity with Hamas and the plight of the Palestinians. It is generally agreed by Middle East experts that Hamas launched its October 7th attack out of fear that Saudi Arabia, a Sunni-controlled nation, just like Hamas, a Sunni-controlled organization, they feared that Saudi Arabia was about to open up full diplomatic relations with Israel and forget about the Palestinians. Hamas reportedly knew Israel would respond disproportionately to October 7th and thereby draw the entire Middle East into the war. That was the plan. But Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, except for Hezbollah, and the Persian Gulf states have stayed out of the fighting, instead trying to help jumpstart a ceasefire. Even Lebanon now is calling for a ceasefire with Hezbollah. Only the Iranian-backed Houthi fighters in Yemen and Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon launched attacks on Israel in solidarity with Hamas. Iran did launch 2 missile attacks against Israel this year. The first attack was back in April. Iran was retaliating for an Israeli missile strike on their embassy in Syria killing 2 Iranian generals. What were 2 Iranian generals doing in Syria? Well, Syria, which borders Israel, is a Shia-controlled nation. But like Lebanon, has an Iranian military presence due to its weakened central government after more than a decade of civil war. Iran's second missile strike against Israel was this month, and it was in retaliation for Israel's killing of Hezbollah's General Secretary Hassan Nasrallah. Israel has yet to respond to Iran's attack. Hassan Nasrallah was the top leader of Hezbollah. Israel has taken out the top leader of Hezbollah and has taken out the top leaders of Hamas. And the thinking is the Palestinian Authority, ruled by Fatah, which is a rival political organization to Hamas, the thinking is if there's a day after, somehow Israel and a UN peacekeeping force will install a Palestinian Authority run by Fatah instead of Hamas in Gaza, if there's ever a day after. Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, called Sinwar, quote, a martyr. Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, called Sinwar's killing, quote, painful for the world's freedom seekers, especially the heroic people of Palestine, and a clear sign of the unstoppable crimes of the child-killing Zionist occupier regime. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said after the killing of Sinwar that Israel settled its account with him. Then Benjamin Netanyahu added, this war has not ended. Netanyahu said the fighting won't stop until Hamas no longer rules Gaza and no longer exists.
Israel has a right to defend itself.
Campaigning in Wisconsin, Vice President Harris commented on Sinwar's killing.
And the threat Hamas poses to Israel must be eliminated. Today, there is clear progress toward that goal. Hamas is decimated and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure. The hostages are released. The suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Harris, just like Joe Biden, supports a two-state solution, but she's made it clear, just like Joe Biden, that Hamas must be eliminated.
And it is time for the day after to begin without Hamas in power.
I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Please share this episode. Please like this episode. Please check out shopdavidfeldman.com. You might want to buy my worst case scenario mug. Got some other stuff there like Donald Trump as a predator. You have any MAGA moron friends? Well, buy these idiots a MAGA cap, and because they can't read, they won't see the words low IQ individual on the back. This is one of my favorites. This is Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. It's a really well-made cup. I keep putting it through the dishwasher, and it just looks great. And if you want to break my heart, pick up the chef's apron with the words, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. This is my big seller. This reminds me of the real audience that I've cultivated. The I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron. If you really want to hurt my feelings, buy that. And check out the Halloween collection. I've got some scary stuff like this 2029 souvenir from the inaugural ball featuring, isn't that great? Melania and Donald Trump, they look so happy. Thank you to Mila and Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. I read all your comments, so leave a comment. And please get to work for the Democratic Party. Get to work. She's going to win. I'll go over the Senate on my next show. Probably not doing a show tomorrow, but I'll probably do one the following day. I'm being pretty good about doing this at 2:30 a.m. Eastern. Thank you. I push you away, but in all seriousness, thank you for listening to this, because this is these are not pleasant times. And if I didn't have this show, I don't know what. Just thank you for letting me do this show. Thank you.